Welcome in, everybody. This is Writer's Blok with a K. I'm Eli Max here with E.M. Bates. And like any good story, we're going to give you our own introductions, our own first impressions.
Yes, indeed.
Our own uniqueness to draw you in further.
So
as every great tale does.
This is the first episode of Eli's new podcast known as Writer's Blok,
With a K.
where him and guests, probably mostly myself, will be discussing the various elements of how to be a successful writer, and hopefully you'll have some fun along the way. So, would you like to introduce yourself and your writing?
Sure. I'm Eli Max. I have assisted writing 2 analog horror series so far, one of which is The Pashka Bunny. You can find that on Move channels. The other one is an upcoming horror project. And then I also assistant write in the video game Out of Service, which I was promoted to a primary writer for Game 2. I would check that out on Game Jam if you can. That's where you'd know me from, because that's all my published work, but I have a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that are not yet getting promoted due to early development.
What would you consider your writing style to be? What kind of genres?
Probably horror. I think I'm going to stick with a horror genre. You know, not only is it the time to do it, but it's also, I fell in love with it about a year after I first started writing. I don't know, I have so much fun in there, just because horror, what you're looking for is you're mostly looking for atmospheric works. Because some of the scariest things are things you can't see. And if you have a tense setting of a monster you can't see, there's a book. There's a book right there.
Yes. Well, I myself am E.M. Bates. Don't have a lot of published work. I mainly write for myself, and maybe I'll publish it eventually, but I pretty much do a lot of genres. I kind of like to mix and blend different genres, so in that sense I have a bit of a postmodernist writing style. So that's basically when it comes to me.
Sweet. I mean, you're still growing. You're still getting your name out there in various different ways. And, you know, when I first started out, I mostly just wrote for myself and my friends and just showed it around. There's a few short stories on which never got published that my friends love of mine. One of which is a alterization and origin story for Jack the Ripper, which a lot of people know, but not a lot of people have seen due to lack of publication. So you're kind of in the same field, are you not? Like, you have a lot of short stories that are pretty well known, but they're not really published, so we can't really find them if we try to hunt for you on Wikipedia.
Yeah, I guess you could say that I have published some of my stuff on YouTube, if that counts. I mean,
yeah.
Well, then on this channel, it's his podcast, but it's my channel because he wanted our best chance of getting a lot of views.
I did.
So if you look previously on my channel, there is some stuff. There is part of my book, Blood Upon the Waves. I think I recorded the first 3 chapters on here. And whatever, there's my other podcast, although that's not really writing. And all right, I guess we'll just get into the theme of the first episode, which is how to start. Given that we are starting the podcast, you can start your story. So
Exactly. So let me give you a little bit of backstory. When I was first starting out, it was 2021, I would say, around the time of COVID. And the way I first started was I was watching TV, and the show came on. And in watching the show, there was a very interesting character and setting. The character's name was Virgil, and the setting was a spaceship. If you know the show, you know the show. If not, I'll probably mention it in later episodes. And I wrote about 50 pages of this guy in a spaceship And that was the first thing I ever wrote. I experimented so much because before then, I hadn't taken any college courses. I hadn't worked with anybody. I hadn't an editor even. I was on my own, just me and a bunch of proofreaders. So I would say the best way to start a story is to start an idea. You don't have to finish the entire idea. Just start an idea. I mean, I could think of multiple books on which the idea is a dog. It's like there's Cujo, there's Shiloh, there's
Dog's Life.
Dog's Life. There's so many books that have a main character simply being a dog. And then they expand from there.
Yeah. I mean, you're basically just saying the best way to start
Is
to get an idea and then just write it and don't really have concern for what the finished product is going to be like.
Oh, yeah, no.
Because it's your first one.
Yeah, well, take it from me. There are some works that I come out with that I still do not like. And I edit it and edit it and edit it. And I believe Sanderson was the one that's... it was either Sanderson or Azira. So either Brandon Sanderson or Azira Keeley. One of the two said that what you want to do on your first book is write it and then go back and edit it, because your first draft's going to be shit anyways, but then edit it and edit it and edit it and form it into something that looks a little bit nicer.
Yeah, I mean, when I started back in 18, it was just me and my friends, which friends helps. It also hurts. I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages to writing collaboratively. But when I started back in 18, we really just wanted... it's kind of like what Max said. We had an idea of something that would be cool, and we wanted to bring it to life. So we didn't really have concern for how well it was written. We didn't really have concern for if anyone would read it. We just wanted to see it on the page. So we started writing, and like any skill in writing, repetition breeds improvement. If you just write a bunch of stuff, especially if you have other people critiquing you, you're gonna get better just by the fact that you're doing it and learning the techniques. It's like if you sit down every day and draw a picture of a cat for a year, you're gonna be pretty good at it by the end of the year. Same thing with writing. If you sit down once a week and write 10 pages every week, by the end of a year, you'll have over 500 pages, and you'll probably be pretty good.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, Stephen King writes 8 a day, and look at him.
Yeah. I mean, even if you just write a paragraph a day, I mean, if you write a paragraph a day, you could probably get 2 pages a week, and you could probably get over 150 pages a year.
Yeah, definitely. Something I would suggest, though, for early risers, you gotta be readers.
True.
If you want to write, you gotta be readers. And the reason I say this is because I've worked with some writers that don't read a lot. They watch a lot of shows. And see, that's their reference point.
And, it's a similar, but it's different.
Right, because one of which, you can visibly see the setting and the characters, and you don't have to really go into detail in describing them. And the other one, we are not seeing Morgan Freeman on the screen. We're not seeing Morgan Freeman in our pages.
Yeah.
We're not seeing a prison in our pages. We got to describe the prison so then we can see it.
Yeah, definitely you got to read. But at the same time, don't read too much.
No.
And definitely don't rip people off.
No, yeah. Some of the hardest things that I do is I go out of my way to make sure I have completely original work.
Yeah, and make sure to read different stuff. Like, if you say, I'm reading a lot, but you read 10 books by Stephen King a year, your writing style is going to sound a whole lot like Stephen King.
Right.
And not like much else.
No,
you got to read different genres, different authors, different styles. Even nonfiction, because nonfiction has value even if you're writing fiction.
Well, something I will say is you should primarily read the style you want to write.
Yeah, but at some point you might want to write a new style. And
Oh yeah, yeah, so, definitely.
You know.
Definitely, that's true. But if you have me, myself, and I, we are horror writers. And so I read a lot of horror and thriller-like books. So that's how I make sure that I get my atmosphere right and get my characters right. No, I don't have any dumb ones. And so I just read a lot. Like, I can't give you my favorite book. I read too much books, and I analyze too much books to have a clear favorite. But I could give you authors I come back to. I could recommend you a book for your genre.
Yeah, I mean, myself, I used to read basically like many different genres, but now that I've kind of settled more or less into a style of you could say postmodernist historical fiction, kind of. That's mostly what I read. I mean, Catch-22, my favorite, Slaughterhouse-5, House of Leaves. You gotta read what you want to write.
Yeah.
Basically, but not exclusively. I also read a lot of nonfiction, which one just gives me information, which it's good to know. If you want to write a fictional world, you got to know a lot about the real one to get ideas, and also just shows you how to write. I mean, just where to place verbs, where to place commas.
Yeah. I feel like nonfiction will help a lot more in editing, where fiction will help a lot more in progressing the story.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But yeah, I totally get your point as well. Also, something that'd be cool is if you can insert like walking sound effects. That way it's a little bit more, like we're doing more than one thing and not just sitting at a desk. I think that'd be pretty cool, personally.
Okay. Make it seem like a bit of a stroll.
Yeah. Because that's what writers could do. Sometimes, personally, I stroll when I'm looking for ideas.
Yeah, I mean, on one side you gotta read, and you gotta write a lot, but on the other side, you need some just quiet spaces where your mind can process the ideas and come up with new ideas.
Oh yeah, step 2 is definitely basically find what Happy Gilmore would say your happy place.
So just, walking, bicycling, any kind of mindless activity where you can just think.
Right. Well, like, where you can kind of clear yourself from things. If you walk constantly, you're not going to be thinking step, 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 step. If you're bicycling, you're not going to think, I got to keep pedaling. Your mind's going to breeze. You're going to think of random stuff. But, yes, reading a lot would help so much get into writing, along with finding your happy place, both of which is going to help a lot. But you may be writing, you may have a George R.R. Martin sickness here and write a sentence and hate the sentence, delete the sentence, write another sentence, delete the sentence. I would say if you do have the Martin disease, just expand on the sentence. Don't delete it. Expand it.
Yeah, add context.
Right.
I would personally say for your very first thing, which you should probably not publish.
No.
And not have an intention of publishing it unless it turns out you're like an IQ of 5 million and it's insanely good.
Right, unless you're...
But even then, I mean...
writing Throne of Glass. And...
Yeah, but usually you should not have an intention of publishing your first story. It should just be more of an experiment. So I would say don't delete a single word, basically.
No. Yeah, no.
I mean,
chances are you're not going to be a J.K. Rowling and your first books become your bestsellers, nor will you probably be, can't remember her name, but To Kill a Mockingbird.
Atwood?
Yeah.
No, wait.
No.
Hold on.
That doesn't sound right.
That is, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, whoever it is.
Atwood is The Handmaid's Tale. I believe. But who wrote To Kill... Whatever.
Yeah, type it in the comments for me.
Anyway.
But my trick for your very first sentence, my little rule of thumb that I do at absolute every story I write, give you a character's name and describe the setting. That is my personal rule. Like,
Yeah. I mean, like, you should be able to know what the story... You should be able to get the gist of the story from the first sentence.
yeah, that's a good rule. But if you're writing scripts, I would say a good... If you're like, oh, I'm a script writer, I'm not a story writer. Okay. Try to make it so then your first 10 to 15 minutes, accurately describes the tone of the story you're going.
And a good way you can do that for scripts where there's no, like, narrative voice. It's just dialogue and camera movements and stuff. A good way you can establish tone with a script is a cold open, where you have characters that are not important from the story, just having a random conversation, and that tells you about the world, and then your story starts. That is a very popular technique that I've employed, and know a lot of shows and television and movies employ it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I do think that the old Sword in the Stone movie might do something similar to that before we get introduced to Merlin and Arthur. Or not Arthur. Is it Arthur?
I believe so.
Might be Arthur. It's been a while since I've seen that movie, but that movie does that exact same thing. Starts with other knights trying to pull the sword out before Arthur gets even introduced into the plot.
Yes, because that establishes the setting.
Yeah.
And that tells you the conflict. That someone needs to be able to pull the sword out and no one can. Yep. So, I think conflict, that brings us to, how should you plan a story? Do you believe in the approach of just writing and letting it grow, or do you believe in the approach of starting with an outline and knowing where you want to take it?
Well, I'm personally a gardener rather than an architect. I have a general plot of the story. What I mean by general plot is the general plot of Harry Potter is after his parents dies, Harry must go to school to train himself to be strong enough to overpower and kill the Dark Lord. That's the overarching plot of Harry Potter.
Yeah, the log line.
Yes. I come up with a log line, an overarching plot, and then I write from there. Sometimes I have been brought on and hired onto projects where they do have a ton of notes for me to read over. Like there's one project, this is actually the one ongoing in development, the sleep experiment. He already had a ton of notes on it, at least 5 pages. So it's a page an episode. All he wanted me to do was put it in a script format and make it flow. There are some on which that is really easy to do. There are some people that are going to call you and be like, hey, can you do that? It's so easy. But most of the time, yes, I'm a gardener in that situation. I come up with a little tagline, let it grow from there.
Yeah. I mean, I do think it is useful, though, because, I mean, it depends. You got to find out which one you're going to be. But I think it can be useful to kind of know where you take it so you don't get lost, especially if you're just starting out. Like, maybe just have a sentence for what's going to happen in every chapter or every paragraph. I mean, I don't really do that, but I used to more when I was starting out, and it helped me a lot back then.
Yeah, I know a writer that I still work with. We're working on a book series, but it's probably not going to be released for quite a while, so I'm not going to promote it around yet. And what he likes to do is plan a ton. Like, I'm talking 4 months of calling and consistent planning before he writes down anything. I personally dislike that approach because then what is there to find out in your story? You plan so much you can't improv anything. If you can't improv anything, what's the fun in writing? You get what I mean? The point of writing it, if you can't improv, is just seeing it on the page.
Yeah.
I like to surprise myself and be like, oh, I didn't think of this, but I will in future projects. This might be a go-to next time I write, something of similar plot.
Yeah, well, if you're going to be writing it naturally or you're going to be planning it out, you need to know the basic elements that make a good story, right? It's not, unless you're an extremely good writer, which if you're listening to episode 1, how to start a story, you're probably not, because you're just figuring out how to start. A story about 2 guys sitting at a bar where nothing happens and they don't say anything interesting is probably not going to be very good.
No.
Because there's no conflict. Every good story pretty much has a conflict, characters that overcome that conflict, a climax of the action, and then a resolution. Just the classic triangle-shaped story.
Yeah. Although, sometimes I would personally say have more than one conflict. I would say have a capital B and a lowercase b, which I learned at BYU. A lowercase p plot is a minor plot. It's a character walking into a bar and thinking to himself, what am I in the mood to drink? It's a tiny little plot that just helps you understand the character that we're following and watching. The capital P plot is the overarching plot. That is, why he's in, let's say it's an anniversary of a family member's death or something else, and he's going to the bar to grieve or get over the fact that something happened in his life. So I would say have a capital and lowercase p. Now, planning it out would make it easier, but I've gotten so used to not planning out my stories and just letting them come to me and writing them down after the fact that I'm kind of doing this subconsciously.
Yeah, and that is, you will develop, a lot of these things will become subconscious for you as you become a better writer.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've been writing for 8 years at this point, so a lot of this stuff I don't even think about it, but if you're starting out, you're going to have to plan all this out because it doesn't come naturally to you. It doesn't really come naturally to anybody.
Yeah. And let's say you're trying to write one while you're listening to this podcast, and let's say your sentence currently starts with the fireflies flicker above the lake in the near crescent moon. That's fine. That's honestly poetic. But we don't know a lot about the character.
I mean, yeah, there's no characters.
Although it creates setting pretty beautifully, I would say that you should add a character, at least a name of a character.
At least in the next sentence. And I think this is a good place to talk about characters, because characters are, I mean, I know we disagree on this. We talked about this before, but I believe characters to be the most important part of any story. Pretty much all of them, because it is the way the audience connects to it. The audience relates to the characters, and because they are also human. So when you're writing a character, you really need to make sure that you're writing somebody, you got to make sure you're writing somebody that the audience is going to care about. They don't have to like them. A lot of the times they will hate them, like a villain, but it has to be someone they'll care about. Yeah, it has to be, they have to feel human. They can't just be one note. They can't just be, I am evil guy, unless you're intentionally subverting a genre, which is probably a lot too advanced for this.
Dr. Evil, sorry.
Yeah, but they were subverting a genre.
Yeah.
Which is too advanced for this course, this episode.
Right.
But, so they gotta be complex. They have to have, I would say, at least a good thing and a bad thing, like a flaw and a strength. I mean, a hero's gonna have a lot more strengths than he has flaws, and a villain the opposite. But a hero with no flaws and a villain with no strengths is not good.
Yeah, off the top of my head, there is a writer I worked with in the past who had a character who constantly kept winning. Constantly kept being the bad guy and nobody could outsmart him.
Yeah.
The issue with this character is nobody wants to see a winner in a story. They want to see the loser in a story.
Because most people feel like losers.
I mean...
And people want to connect.
Exactly. Yeah.
People don't like it when the bad guy wins everything, because in real life that sucks. And I mean, it can be entertaining for a bit, but it's ultimately nothing that's going to emotionally captivate an audience.
Right. Like, let me give you a slight example here. Dexter is a character that's meant to portray being incredibly smart, and he is pretty smart in the series, but he's not smart enough to rule out every single aspect and win constantly.
Yeah, he actually has challenges that the audience can be like, oh, I wonder if he's going to overcome that.
Right. And there's a book I read recently that does a poor job, in my opinion, doing this. And if I could talk to the author, I'd honestly kind of love to get her viewpoint on why she wrote the character this way. But it was I believe it was The Good Samaritan was the book that I read. And it's about a character who pretty much just keeps on winning. And I got tired of it near the end. I mean, I got tired. I got a little bored of it before the end, but at the end, when everything was supposed to be resolved, I wasn't satisfied because to me it didn't feel like anything was being left open.
I mean, I think good characters get fan fiction. Good characters are so good that fans of the book like just need to have them, so they write extra stories about them.
Have you done that with Catch-22?
No. But people have.
People have.
I mean, and so, I mean, who has the most fan fiction about them? Star Wars? Harry Potter? I mean, stuff like that, because they're very compelling characters that people just want infinite of.
I could also argue Overwatch, but that's not really a good story.
And I mean...
Nor would I look that up.
People connect to characters for a lot of reasons, but I would say primarily they relate to them. Not entirely, because it's going to be boring if you're reading a story of a guy that's just like you. But some aspect. Like, people can relate to Darth Vader. Like, they can relate to the revenge he felt. Even if they don't agree with it, they can be like, yeah, I can see why he felt that. I would also have those impulses, but he gave in to them.
Yeah, I would agree. And a trick for characters, if you're developing them, is take a bunch of people you know in real life and just mix their characteristics together.
Yes, because obviously those are real people. And so you're using a source that is good.
Exactly. And the world's hopefully never going to run out of people for you to basically steal, traits off of.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of authors base characters on their friends, their family, almost to the point where it's like really close, which can make some people upset. So maybe don't base the villain unironically on your dad and then show it to him.
Oh yeah, no, that would not be a good idea.
Where it's like very obvious. But, speaking of basing it on real life, I think one of the most important things is, this is not required, but certainly makes it a lot easier. Go off your own life. I mean, doesn't have to be explicit. Like, if all you've ever done is worked in a paper factory, you don't have to write a story like Johnny in the Paper Factory, but you can write about a guy who is working a job that he doesn't like, or you can write about, like, if you know what it's like to have a cruel boss, you can write a story about a cruel boss, or even like a dictator. If you know what it's like to, I don't know, if you were in a war, maybe write a war story, because you actually know what it's like.
Yeah, I was about to say I agree and disagree with you there, but no, I agree with that. You have something that schools tell you a lot, not colleges, high schools primarily, tell you, hey, write what you know. Well, there's an issue there. Because all I know how to do is be in your class and listen to you.
Yeah.
Or hang out with friends, but do the same old, same old. So you do want to, yes, you want to write what you know, but you also want to mirror what you know with other aspects to make it a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, like take elements of a struggle from your life, but put in a different setting.
Right. Like instead of me on the, behind my desk trying to figure out how I'm going to kill this character, I can be like, I don't know, a plague doctor trying to save somebody from an incurable sickness.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the best books are based pretty closely on the author's own experiences. I mean, but they change it. Mm-hmm. Catch-22, my favorite book, the author was a bomber pilot in World War II in Italy, just like in the book, but he also added a lot of stuff that it was based on his later life.
Oh yeah, I do really hope that soldiers aren't actually like that in real life.
I think they're not. It's more of a parody about society.
But
that's what he did.
They said, they just laughed at me.
But that's what Joseph Heller did. He took experiences from his entire life, because he didn't write the book until the 60s, and the war ended in 45. But he took experiences from his entire life and put them into the setting of when he was in the war. So you don't have to stick to exactly what you know. It just helps a lot to take aspects from it.
Yeah. I think the most important key parts in starting your craft is don't delete much of anything until at least half the page. Sometimes I have, corrected sentences, but when you're starting out, you mostly want to continue writing till you filled up at least half of the page with your story. In which case, if half the page is full and you think it's a bad idea, then you can remove it or edit it. So I do think A is not to delete too much stuff. B is balance between character and setting and try to get both within the first paragraph introduced.
Yep.
Although some stories I can argue that don't do this. For instance, the book, and I'm not a huge fan of this book, but I like other Orwell's works. Was it 1948?
84.
84?
Yeah, 1984.
1984, yeah, that's it. That started off with basically, I don't remember the exact beginning sentence, but I do remember it was talking about the time, and then it introduced the settings before it introduced the character. If you think the first couple paragraphs is a bit soon, you want to do it. You'd be kind of wrong. You'd want to do it before at least paragraph 4.
Yeah, I mean, also, you need to keep reading. I mean, you're not worried about this so much of your first unpublished story, but no. You want to keep readers' attention.
Exactly. That does not mean use the TikTok strategy and put Subway Surfers on the side of your story.
But you want to make the first page something that'll keep them, because the first page is where 95% of people stop reading a book.
Is that a fact? I didn't know this.
No, I just made that up.
Oh.
But it's probably true. And the back cover.
Yeah. I mean, here's a little thing that I look for when I'm in the library or Barnes & Nobles or Amazon's. Well, I won't judge a book based on its cover.
But it does help.
I'm going to base it entirely off its title and the back page.
Yeah.
Which Ian Bates kind of jokes about is pretty much just me judging it off of its cover.
I mean, pretty much.
So I would say something that's helped me as a story prompt or story starter is the title of the story. Now, there are some stories that I'm very curious about that I haven't yet read, but the titles sound interesting. There is one story. Nobody spoil it for me, please. I'm excited about this one, but I've gotten quite a few people trying to. The book's called John Dies at the End.
I'm pretty sure John might die at the end.
Hey! But that is a series I'm very curious about and very interested in reading, simply because of how intriguing the title sounds.
Yeah.
Um,
All right. What would you say is the letter C?
and C, let's see. A was what? Introduce the
It was
character,
don't delete.
Oh yeah, A was don't delete.
B was introduce your setting and character.
Okay, yeah. So then C would have a lowercase p. And if you don't remember what that is, it's a minor plot. Have a lowercase p plot in your story. If it's a short story, you don't want a giant overarching. You don't want to be like, my dad told me when I get older, I have to vanquish all the demons and non-believers. Although that would be very interesting with short story. Your first story should probably have something more of a lowercase p plot.
Something smaller. Something just like a guy walks into a bar.
Right. And personally, I enjoy more realistic kind of stories. I'm not saying that I don't enjoy Harry Potter, but I enjoy grounded like stories that make its rules and live off its rules.
Yeah, I mean, that's another important thing. You gotta have be internally consistent. Unless you're going for a postmodernist thing, which again, too advanced for this episode. You have to make rules and stick to them. And because you need to keep up the trust of the reader that if things happen, they have consequences, the same ones they've had through the entire book. So if you just have a completely realistic story where magic doesn't exist, and then halfway through you add a bunch of magic,
Nobody's gonna like the story.
Yeah, you broke the audience's trust. They're gonna be like, I thought this wasn't supernatural.
Or fantasy or whatever.
Or the kind of meme at this point, it was all a dream.
Yeah.
You're basically just devaluing the entire story you wrote previously because you destroyed the audience's trust.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's it for this episode. Thanks for stopping by. I would say click the link in the description, but we don't have one.
Make sure to tune in for the next episode. Give us a like and comment your feedback.
Yeah, and definitely subscribe to James Pigeon. He's the first guy that hired me to come onto his podcast. Check me out privately if you'd like at Glitchum_ on Twitch, where I mostly just play video games.
Yep, that's GLITCHEM _ on Twitch.
Yep. And I hope to get some of your feedback, comments, questions, or if you answer some of my own questions, or have a different opinion. I hope to see it as soon as I can.
All right.